Okay, hi everyone again, and welcome to 7 Steps to Getting a Band 7, 8, or even 9 on your IELTS writing test. This is Chris, and I will be taking you through this lesson. So, let's get going. So, let's start off with my goal for you guys this week. So my goal is I'm going to show you the key things that help our students go from struggling with Task 2 writing to getting the scores that they need. This is the only reason why IELTS Advantage exists. All we do all day, every day, is just help people improve their IELTS scores. So that is what we're going to try and do for you guys this week. Once our students start doing these, we found that they improve their score by an average of 1.39 bands, nearly 1.5 bands, which for most people, that is enough to get the scores that they need. We collect a huge amount of data on our VIP students, and one of the things that we ask them is simply, what score were you getting before you joined us, and what score did you get after you got the scores you need once we helped you? And the average is about 1.5 bands. So we're obviously not going to go into the same level of detail as we would with our VIP students. What we've done instead is distill, condense everything down just to the key things that we teach our VIP students so that you guys can learn them for free in a very short period of time. So the plan of action this week, today, Monday, thinking and planning. So the live lesson was at 11 a.m. You're watching the replay, so that's probably a little bit after that. So today we're going to focus on understanding the question. A huge number of students are great at writing essays, but they don't know how to systematically understand the question. We're going to show you how to do that. A lot of students waste a huge amount of time brainstorming and trying to generate ideas, and that wastes time, and then it doesn't really help them generate good ideas either. So we're going to show you how to avoid all of that and generate ideas quickly and easily, ideas that you can actually use and then put into your essay, plan out your entire essay. Writing will be at 11 a.m. So thinking and planning first, and then we're going to move on to actually putting your pen on the paper, writing your introduction, your main body paragraphs and conclusions. Try and join us live for that tomorrow at 11 a.m. Day 3, we are going to be focusing on editing. So when you're editing your essay, after you have finished everything, you're going to be looking at the vocabulary and grammar, and we're also going to show you how to improve your vocabulary and grammar before you do the test, because the better your vocabulary and grammar, the better your score is going to be. So there are 7 key steps that we're going to teach you. Number 1 is thinking. Number 2, planning. Number 3, how to write an introduction. Number 4, main body paragraphs. Number 5, grammar. Number 6, conclusions. And number 7, vocabulary. And think of these as like tires or wheels on a car. So most cars have 4 wheels, and it doesn't matter if you have the best car in the world. If one of those wheels is missing, that car is useless and it doesn't work. Exactly the same for writing. Think about each of these as absolutely essential. It doesn't matter if you have great grammar and vocabulary, but you don't know how to write a main body paragraph. And it doesn't matter if you know how to write great main body paragraphs, but you don't know how to think about your question correctly or plan everything out. Each of these steps is absolutely essential, and once you understand all of these, then everything becomes much, much easier. So do these actually work? You're going to be spending 3 days with me, 3 hours of your life, and you should always ask your teachers and your schools and your courses, do these things actually help? Do they actually work? Because as you know, there's a huge amount of confusing and conflicting information out there. So anyone teaching you should be able to prove to you very, very simply that what they are teaching you actually works. Because if they don't teach you things that work, you're going to waste a huge amount of time, you're going to waste a huge amount of money, and your IELTS score will determine your future. It will determine which country you live in, it will determine which job you do, where you work, how much money you make, the happiness and security of you and your family. So it is very, very, very important that you fully trust me and fully trust that what we do works. So let me show you something really quickly. If you go to our website, IELTSadvantage.com, so you'll find lots of great free information on there. But what we do is, with all of our VIP students, we collect and are transparent with their success stories. So we don't just have more success stories than any other IELTS course in the world. We have 10 times more. Here's more than 100 one-on-one interviews with past VIP students. So I think having 10 times more success stories than even this, the second most successful course in the world, proves that what we do actually works. And then if you continue to scroll down and you click here on more testimonials, we also have a VIP group, and each student posts their results when they get the results. And every single one of these is at a 7 or above, and they're all talking about how happy they are, how they've seen a massive increase in their scores. And if you go and check those out, there are thousands of them. And again, no other IELTS school course in the world has this number of happy, successful students. There's so many that we literally can't show you this many, but you know that it actually works and you can trust the information that we're going to give you. And you might also be thinking, how can they have 10 times more success stories than any other course? And we only work with a very small number of students. How is that possible? Well, let me show you just 3 very simple photos. This is my wife, this is my son, and this is obviously me. The main reason why I set up IELTS Advantage was to provide happiness and security for my family. And when my wife was doing the IELTS test, I put her through the exact same course, gave her the exact same advice. And if my son was doing the test in the future, I would do exactly the same thing for him. So our number one principle at IELTS Advantage is treat every student like family. Every single one of our VIP students is treated like family, which means that we give them the absolute best advice and we're 100% honest with them. So that is what we're going to do for you guys. We're going to give you the absolute best advice we can give you, be 100% honest with you, and then you can go and get the score that you need. So, thinking. So the very first thing that you need to do when you see the question is think about it. A huge mistake that a lot of students make is they look at the question very, very quickly and just immediately start writing. And most students completely fail to understand the question. And thinking is all about just fully understanding the question and planning out everything before you start writing. So let's start off with a little test. I'm going to give you a real IELTS question, alright? So I want you to read this question. This came up in the real test. Research indicates that the characteristics we are born with have much more influence on our personality and development than any experiences we have in our life. Which do you consider to be the major influence? Think of one idea for the first question and comment below this video. You're watching the recording of this, so you're not watching the live session, so you can't comment. All I want you to do is just think of one idea for this question. Alright, just think of one idea for this question. Don't take too much time, take about 10 seconds, and then we'll look at some of the results. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay, so when we did this with our students, normally there are 2 different answers, alright? Normally people say, I agree with the characteristics we are born with, and here are some reasons why I agree with this. Other students say, I agree with experiences we have in our life are more important, and reasons for this. And then other students give a list of characteristics. So they say intelligence is important, being kind is important, being compassionate is important, all of these different characteristics that people have. One is completely wrong and one is right. I want you to have a think again about the question and how you would answer this question, and think about which group of students are correct and which students are wrong. So again, just pause the video and have a think about this. Okay, so if you thought that just listing some characteristics was the correct answer, you were wrong. And most people give that kind of answer. About 80 or 90% of students give that kind of answer. If you said either characteristics you're born with and reasons why you think that is the most important one, or development you've had in your life since you've been born is the major influence, then you are correct. Why is this? Well, let's look at the question. Research indicates that the characteristics we are born with have much more influence on our personality and development than any experiences we have in our life. And the key word there is "and." So there's two opposing ideas here. One idea is that the major influence on your life is basically your DNA, what you are born with. On the other side are people who believe that that doesn't really matter. What matters is your upbringing, your environment, your life after you are born, and that has the major influence. So what is the question asking you? Which do you consider to be the major influence? It is not saying what characteristics are a major influence on someone's life. They're saying which, either the first idea or the second idea. So if you didn't fully understand that, it is impossible for you to get a 7 or above, because 25% of your total mark will be, did you clearly understand the question, and did you clearly answer the question? You cannot answer the question if you don't understand it. And this is why we need to come up with a systematic strategy, a step-by-step system to make sure that we always understand the question. So let's look at how to analyze and understand a question. Number one, before we start, take the time to actually read and think about the question. 99% of problems can be solved by just doing this, and 99% of students get the question wrong because they don't do this. They don't spend enough time thinking about the question, and then they study for a very long time, and then they get 6 or 6.5, and they get very angry. And really, they're getting angry at the wrong people. They blame their teacher or IDP or the British Council, and when we sit down with those students and go through the question that they did, it's clear within 1 minute that the student just did not take the time to understand the question. These questions are designed to be simple and easy to understand. They are designed that way. That one that I just showed you, that's a little bit tricky, but not that tricky when you actually take the time to think about it and apply the step-by-step system that we're going to show you now. Thirdly, do not overcomplicate it. There is a huge amount of misinformation out there on the internet about what the examiners want, what they don't want, how to get a high score, and a lot of the advice is make it more complicated, make it more high level, make it more complex. You should in fact do the opposite of that. There's no high marks for thinking of really complex answers or complex ideas. The simplest ideas are always the easiest to think of and the easiest to write about and the easiest to show the examiner you've understood the question and you've answered it correctly. And take it out of the IELTS context, normalize it. So what I used to do with my students is I would go into the classroom about 10 minutes before the class started, and I would just have a normal conversation with them. And I would play little tricks with them sometimes where I would take IELTS question topics and I would ask them about that in a normal, everyday context. So, for example, if the question was about global warming, I'd go into the classroom and I'd say something like, "Oh, it's really hot these days, isn't it? Like, the weather is really hot. Do you think that's about global warming?" And they would give really great answers and great ideas. But then as soon as I put it into an IELTS context, say, let's do a IELTS question about this, they made it way more complicated than it needed to be. Okay, so let's go through this step-by-step system. And what we do at IELTS Advantage is we try and give our students step-by-step systems for everything, because we find that once they practice these and then they start using them, it becomes automatic for them, and it just makes things so much easier on test day. And it's one of the reasons why our students are the most successful IELTS students in the world, is because they follow these step-by-step systems. So let's have a look at the one for understanding any Task 2 question. Number one, what does a question mean? Take the time to read the question and think about, what does it actually mean? What do the words mean? What do the sentences mean? What is it actually asking me? Then number two, what is the general topic? We need to understand the general topic so that we do not write about that. We do not want to write everything we know about the general topic. What we want to do is we want to write about the specific things they want you to write about. So, for example, the question could be, the general topic could be global warming again, but what they're asking you about is electric cars. So the general topic is global warming, but the specific thing is about electric cars and how they help global warming. So you need to specifically focus on this. Don't worry, we'll look at example questions and everything. What are the things they want me to do? So they will normally ask you a question. So it could be, do you agree or disagree? Discuss both views. Whatever they ask you to do, you must do those things. So as long as you're doing what they want you to do and you're focusing on the specific things and you've understood the question, then you're going to be able to answer the question. Let's apply that system to a real question. So in many cities, people are living alone. What are the reasons for it? Is this a positive or negative development? What does the question mean? So if we have a look at this, what is it actually saying? In many cities, people are living alone. Have a think about what that is actually saying. Just take 10 seconds and think about it. So about 50% of you will say that the reasons for this are people want to move to cities to get a better education, make more money, better job prospects. Is that what the question is asking us? No. It's saying in many cities, people already living in cities are living alone. It is not about moving to cities. It is about people already living in cities deciding to live by themselves. So again, it's really important that you understand the question. What's the general topic? The general topic is living in cities. Do we write everything we know about living in cities, about how there's so many more jobs there, about the better schools, better health, all of these different things, more crime? No, because it's not asking us about that. What is it asking us? Why do many people already living in cities decide to live alone? And what are the things they want you to do? They want you to say, what are the reasons for it? And they also want you to say, is it a positive or negative development? Is this a good or a bad thing? So you need to say why this is happening and if it's a good or a bad thing. And if you follow this system, it's nearly impossible not to understand the question and give the examiners what they want. So now that we have understood the question and we've gone through that step-by-step system, we need to think of ideas, because what we encourage our students to do is understand the question first, apply that 4-step system, and then try and think of ideas. Because if you try and think of ideas before you have fully understood the question, you're going to be generating ideas for a question that is wrong, that is the completely different thing in your head than what is actually on the paper. So follow that system. Number one, think. Number two, think of ideas. So we've been working with IELTS students for many years, and one of the main struggles that students have is trying to generate ideas quickly that are relevant, that can actually be used in the question. We need to think about, why do people fail to think of good ideas? So it's normally to do with one of the following reasons: not taking their time, so trying to rush through everything and just start writing immediately; not simplifying the question. So often this is not your fault. Often it is because you've been taught by a teacher or a YouTube channel or something like that you need to think of really complex ideas, or you believe that the IELTS test is a really difficult, complicated test. It's not really. It's actually the exact opposite. It is designed to be simple, but it is overcomplicated by some people. Not normalizing the question, so believing that you need to give some high-level, complex idea within the IELTS context. Once you take it out of the IELTS context, it becomes much, much easier. Number 4, brainstorming. We'll get into why this is a bad idea, but 95% of teachers teach brainstorming. If brainstorming worked, then thinking of ideas would be really, really easy. Most students struggle with it, so brainstorming logically does not work. Trying to think of impressive ideas. There are no such things as impressive ideas. There are either relevant ideas you can use in your essay or not. That's the only 2 things you need to think about. And only thinking of what they personally believe. I've heard a lot of people say, I'm a woman, what do I know about this? Or I'm a man, what do I know about this? Or I'm from this country, we don't know anything about this. Or I'm a doctor, or I'm a nurse, or I'm a lawyer, I know nothing about this. They're not testing your ability to just say what you think from your own experience in your own life. You're an intelligent person. You might not be a woman or a man, but you probably know what the opposite gender thinks. So instead of brainstorming, what should we do instead? Well, we need to think about what's wrong with brainstorming, because many of you have been brainwashed into thinking that brainstorming is the correct way of doing it. And, to be honest, if I went to a really good school and teachers told me to do something, then I would believe that that's the way to do it. But again, ask yourself the question, if brainstorming works, why are you even listening to this video? Obviously there is a problem with this. So let's look at why. Nearly all teachers teach by looking at what other teachers do and then copy them. So most IELTS teachers, most English teachers in general, they don't come up with original ideas for their lessons. If they're teaching a IELTS class, they'll look at the topic. That could be teaching how to write an introduction, teaching how to generate ideas, teaching true, false, not given questions. And what they'll do is they'll just go onto Google, they'll put it into Google, have a look around and copy what other teachers are doing. Now, the major weakness of that is that you are assuming that those teachers on Google that you find know what they're doing. Unfortunately, most of them do not. I'm not trying to criticize other teachers. It is just a fact that most IELTS teachers are not that qualified. And most teachers are extremely busy, so they don't have time to do what we do, which is sit down with the student and really think, like, does this actually work or not? And just really maniacally focus on creating the absolute best course that can be created. They just don't have time to do that, and maybe they don't have the motivation to do that either. But we are obsessed with student results, so we do it completely differently. We never copy other teachers. What we do instead is something very obvious, but what most teachers don't do. We just listen to students. So if all of our students are telling us brainstorming does not work, we don't teach them brainstorming, because that is a very clear signal from the student that this stuff doesn't work and we need to think of a better way. We break things down to first principles. We use first principles thinking with everything, and then test these new techniques on our students and simply ask them, is this better? Does this work? Does this help? If they say yes, it's really helpful and it gets me the score that I need, then we use it. If it doesn't, then we don't use it. We only do things that improve scores. We don't copy people on Google. So let me give you some different ways that you can think. Some ways that have worked with our students. So if you were having a look at this question, a different way than brainstorming would be to think about it this way. Imagine you could stop 100 people in London today and ask them those questions. What would they say? So instead of brainstorming, what this does is it forces you to think of the most obvious answers, the most common answers, and the most obvious, common, popular answers will normally be the easiest to think of, the most straightforward, and they will nearly always directly answer the question and be very easy to write about. So we're not only trying to think of ideas, we're trying to think of good ideas. Ideas that answer the question and are easy to write about and are simple to think of. Here's a different way of thinking it. Imagine you were sitting in a coffee shop with a friend talking about this topic. What would they say? So why do we use this technique? Well, it takes it out of an IELTS context. So many students see an IELTS question and panic and try and think of really complicated ideas. If your friend in a coffee shop said to you, I'm thinking of leaving my family and living alone, what would they say? Why would they say that? They'd probably say things like, I want more privacy, or I don't want to live with family anymore because they're really annoying, and I want more freedom, I want more independence. That is very easy to think about once you take it out of the IELTS context. Or imagine someone completely different from you was answering the same question. What would they say? Again, we often get people saying, I'm a female from whatever country, whatever occupation. I don't know about living alone. I lived with my mother and father, and then I got married, and then I lived with my family, my husband, my children. I know nothing about living alone. Well, you don't need to know anything about living alone to understand why people would want to live alone. So if you're struggling to think of ideas because of your lack of personal real-world experience, think of what someone else would say. So if you're a woman, what would a man say? If you're from the Middle East, what would someone from Europe say? If you're a nurse, what would a lawyer say? Someone completely different from you, what would they say? Here's a fourth way that you could think of ideas. What is the first idea that you think of when answering this question? Students can't believe how easy this is and obvious this is, but once they start using this technique, they're like, oh, why did I brainstorm? Why did I draw a bubble in a paper and think of 16 ideas and then waste time trying to sort through them when I already had an idea as soon as I saw that question? So, what would most people say? What would you say if you were talking to a friend? What would someone different from you say? And what is the most obvious answer? Are you going to use all four of these? No, but what we like to do with our students is give them a range of different tools, because everyone's different. Like me, for example, I love number 4 because that is how my brain works. Other people that I work with, they like to think of number 3 because they really struggle to think of ideas because they have lived sheltered lives, or number 1 is more useful for some people, and then other people love this. We call it the coffee shop method. If you're talking to a friend in a coffee shop, what would they say? There's lots of students who make it more complicated than they need to love this method. So pick a method that suits you, practice all of them, and then on test day, it is very unlikely that you're not going to be able to generate relevant ideas. So you don't need to do all of these. Just use them as tools in your toolbox, but please, please, please stop brainstorming. It doesn't work. So I'm going to show you a little case study here. Mohammed, we work with lots and lots of doctors on our VIP course, and let me tell you a little bit about Mohammed because you might identify with him a little bit. He was a very intelligent and successful man. Most of the students that we work with are professionals. They're already in a good job and they want to move to an even better job in the country of their dreams. He was one of the best obstetricians in his country. He delivers babies for a living, and he's one of the top consultants in the city where he lives. His grammar and vocabulary were band 8. He had very, very, very high level grammar and excellent vocabulary. And he memorized all of my structures, so we gave him all the different writing structures and he was using them perfectly. But he kept getting a band 6.5. Why? Because he spent around 10 minutes brainstorming. So you have about 40 minutes to write your Task 2 essay. So he was spending way too much time just on brainstorming. And he was trying to think of really complex, high-level ideas. And we often find this, that the more intelligent the student is, if they're a doctor, if they are a lawyer, if they're a very high-level software engineer or an engineer or something like that, they often try and think of really complex, high-level stuff because that's what their habit is in their job. And if you're delivering babies, you have to, explain things at a very, very high level. And they thought that this is how you do it in the IELTS test because that's how they've done it their whole lives, especially in education. IELTS is exactly the opposite. He could not explain these ideas clearly or concisely. So look at his problem. He's wasting a huge amount of time and then he's generating a bunch of ideas that he can't explain, he can't write about. I helped him by simply saying, what is the first idea that pops in your head, Mohammed? When you look at that question, what is the most obvious idea? Oh, I can use that one? Yes, 100% use that one. And then he started doing that and he got a 7.5. And for most students we work with, that's how easy it is to fix their problems. And if Mohammed had have gone and, tried to do this all himself, he would have gone on, got lots of books and read every book and watched every YouTube channel, and they're all telling him the opposite, which is, brainstorm and try and think of more complicated ideas. And I think Mohammed failed the test like 6 or 7 times, and he had a job offer in London, and he was about to lose that job offer because the hospital were just saying like when are you going to come, when are you going to get this IELTS score, and he would have lost hundreds of thousands of dollars over the next 5 to 10 years if he didn't get that job. So step number 3, planning. Step number 1 is thinking, understanding the question. Step number 2 is idea generation. Step number 3, putting it all into a plan. So imagine that you're going on a trip to New York City. Everyone knows New York City. What would you do before you go? You would probably book your flights. You wouldn't show up at the airport and say, when is the next plane to New York? You would book your hotel. You wouldn't land in New York and try and find a hotel the morning of that you arrive. You probably would also plan your activities. So you would look at the different things that you can do and plan those out. And you would probably get a map of New York, or at least have Google Maps on your phone or Apple Maps or whatever that is, so that you can find your way around. And you might also book a taxi to the airport. You wouldn't just say, okay, let's just start walking to the airport and hopefully that there's a flight. You would never do any of these things. But most of you watching this video, this is how you write your essays. You do no planning. You would never ever go on holiday without doing a little bit of planning. So why would you, probably one of the most important days of your life, the day you're doing the IELTS test, because it will determine your future, why do you do no planning when you're writing an essay? So let's have a look. Planning is an investment of time, not a waste of time. Most people do not plan because they think that they won't have time. Would you ever say, I don't have time to book my flights, so I'll just walk to the airport and hopefully there'll be a flight to New York? No, you would never ever say that. You understand that spending 20, 30 minutes booking your flight is going to save you a huge amount of time in the long run. This is exactly the same with planning for your IELTS test. Think of it as Google Maps. So imagine you're leaving your hotel with your wife or your husband or your son, your daughter, and they say, I want to go to Central Park in New York City. Would you say, let's just walk and hopefully we'll find it? Or would you say, let's check Google Maps and we'll go right there? We're only here for 2 days, so it's probably a good idea to invest time into opening Google Maps, and it'll show you exactly where to go. A plan shows you exactly what to write and saves you a huge amount of time. Would you ever think of checking Google Maps as a waste of time? No. If you do, you're crazy. This allows you to do all your thinking and planning before the next stage, which is writing. So you're doing all of your thinking, all of your planning. Then when you start your writing, when you're writing your introduction, your main body paragraphs, your conclusion, you're going to just be able to focus on writing. You're not going to be thinking, then writing, then thinking, then writing, then thinking, then writing, and then you get lost, and then you go back, and then you, oh my God, I haven't answered the question, oh, I have another idea, and get completely lost. Google Maps for your essay. You will not get lost. So there's 4 stages of planning. Number 1, did you understand the question? We've already covered that. Number 2, generate ideas. We've already covered that. Number 3, called structure planning. This is your map. And number 4, vocabulary, which is optional. We'll cover that on day 3 on Wednesday. So, understanding, in many cities, people are living alone. What are the reasons for it? We need to fully understand this question. We've gone through the step-by-step 4-step system. We know exactly what it's about and what they want us to do. Idea generation. Okay, what are the reasons for it? First idea that pops into my head, privacy. Why do you want to live alone? Because you're a private person and you don't want people in your business. Why is this positive? It reduces stress. For me, personally, I find it very stressful to be in a house with lots and lots of other people, even if they are my own family. I love my family, but I like my alone time. So I think this is a very positive thing because it reduces stress. You might think that it's a really negative thing because you will miss your family and you'll miss all that love and support. Doesn't matter what your idea is, what your opinion is, as long as it is relevant, it answers the question, and you can write about it clearly in your essay. So structure planning, what we're going to do is we're going to take all of these ideas, I'm going to put them into a structure. So MBP 1, main body paragraph 1, my idea is privacy. Explanation allows people to live without other people being involved in their business, asking them questions all the time. Example, young professionals in London. Before I was an IELTS teacher, I used to be a corporate lawyer in London, so I know lots and lots and lots of young professionals in London decide to live alone because they want their privacy. Reduces stress. Explanation, freedom to do whatever you want without judgment of others. Focus on things you enjoy. An example, stress of living with many other people. So I'm going to use that as an example. So the benefits of planning. You know exactly what you're going to write. You know that your writing will be coherent. Coherent means clear. You know that you've answered the question. You know that your writing will be cohesive, so it all links together nicely. And you can focus on writing instead of thinking, which we will look at tomorrow. Tomorrow we're going to look at writing and how to write an introduction, main body paragraphs, conclusions, all those good things. So what did we learn today? The importance of taking the time to think and understand the question, how to quickly and easily think of ideas, and how to plan out your answer, and how much easier will it be for you to start writing once you've done those 3 things. What will we do tomorrow? Main body paragraphs, introduction, conclusion. So here's your task, here's your homework task. In spite of the advances made in agriculture, many people around the world still go hungry. Why is this the case? What can be done about this problem? So this is a real question from Cambridge. what I want you to do is write out a plan. Please do not email it to me. We have thousands and thousands of students doing this course. I don't have time to look at thousands of individual plans, and I will give you feedback on your plan in lesson 2. I'll give feedback to everybody by showing you examples and good ideas, bad ideas, good plans, bad plans, key things you need to do. So please don't email it to me. If you want my one-on-one help, we have the VIP course, but this free course, we don't provide individual one-on-one help. Obviously, I can't do that for 25,000 students. So here's what your plan should look like. Your plan should have an idea, an explanation, an example in the first main body paragraph. Second main body paragraph, you're going to answer that second question, your idea, your explanation, and your example. Don't write full paragraphs or anything. We'll show you how to do that tomorrow. It is just simple ideas. If we go back here and show you the level of detail that you need to go to, it is not much. This is the level of detail you need to go into. Alright, just ideas. Okay, so you are watching the recording of this, so you can't ask me any questions, unfortunately, but my email address is chris@IELTSadvantage.com. If you have any questions, either myself or one of my team will get back to you. Any questions you have about the course, IELTS preparation, just want free advice, or you want to join one of our courses or something like that, send me an email. We're more than happy to help you out. And if you need more information, go to IELTSadvantage.com, and I'll see you tomorrow for lesson 2. Thank you very much. Hey, Chris here, and welcome to the recording of lesson 1 of our free writing course.